Welcome to another episode of A Moment of Tiki, coming to you from the Lagoon of Mystery, my home tiki bar here in Central Texas. One of the most iconic lighting fixtures that you will find in classic tiki bars is the shell lamp, specifically a scallop shell lamp. Often these are swags hanging from the ceiling. You can find them at the Mai Kai, at old school places like the Bahuka, Trader Vic's, Don the Beachcomber. All of them had them. Oceanic Arts sold them up until they ceased operations. The shell lamp with a ring of shells, multiple layers of shells around the lighting element, acting as a shade, is an iconic piece of tiki decor. And so today, that's what I'm going to do. I am going to attempt to construct my very own shell lamp, and I want y'all to come along for the ride.
This is the main light in my upstairs tiki space. And as you can see, it's not tiki at all. I need to do something with this, and the way this light shade is attached precludes me doing a clip over shade like I did downstairs in the Lagoon of Mystery. And I want to try something a little different as well. This is a glass shade diffuser, and it's held on by a threaded rod in the middle attached to this round threaded nut. And this metal disc, and the controls of the light are threaded through the center of this down rod and off to the side, so that controls the fan and the light. Now I have to come up with something that will attach to this threaded down rod and also allow the control chains to go through.
To form the base, I'm going to glue these two 10-inch bamboo embroidery hoops together. You can use Tite Bond, any quality wood glue will work. Tite Bond's one of the better ones. Liberal amounts of glue on all the surfaces. Position right here. I have this on my silicone mat so that glue will come right up fairly easily. Use these quick grip vice clamps on the four edges. Hold it tightly in place until the glue dries.
I've never worked with resin before, and to say I'm a little bit nervous about it is an understatement. It's resin and really do a number on you. When it's curing, it releases toxic fumes. So that is why it is very important that you use a respirator, and have good circulation, air circulation. The respirator, you have to make sure it's got a no-shut filter, one that filters out chemicals, not just particulate matter, gaseous matter. Otherwise, the organics outgassed by this will get in and they can burn your lungs out and cause cancer and all sorts of stuff. So never, ever, ever work with resin without using a respirator. Also, nitrile gloves. Again, you don't want this getting on your hands. There's chemical reactions going on, and some people are less sensitive than others, but you just don't want it getting into your system or on your skin. Nitrile gloves are what you want. Latex is not recommended for use on resin. latex doesn't form a protective barrier, but the nitrile gloves do. And also protective eyewear, because it's not likely to splash, but if it does, you don't want a hardening reactive resin getting into your eye. Safety out of the way, what I have here is a silicone mat that I have wiped down to make sure it's clean with alcohol wipes. I drew out the outline and the circular area on the inside to act as a guide for me where my bamboo hoop is going to go. I've marked here where the holes I'm going to have to drill through the resin are. Now I'm going to clamp the bamboo hoop down onto the board that I have here, so it will be a strong, solid, tight fit. And I'm hoping the pressure of the bamboo hoops against the soft silicone mat will effectively form a dam barrier so we don't have any resin leaking out the underside. Fingers crossed, I know. Fingers crossed on this. Over here, I took a picture of the hoop with the shells laid out on there, so I can use that as a frame of reference. Now I've placed the shells on here, and I'm going to put them in place once I pour the initial layer of resin. I don't want a tinted color resin tinting or coloring the shells. So what I'm initially going to do is pour a clear layer of resin in here to act as the bottom base. The shells are going to go into that resin, and then I am going to pour a tinted colored layer of resin on top. For the first layer of resin, I want to be about a ½ centimeter, so I actually had to do math and figure out volume. And American that I am, I went with metric measurements because going from inches, cubic inches to ounces was head exploding, so I just went with direct centimeters to milliliters. The ratio, the formula is radius times pi times depth. So the radius of this bamboo hoop is 12.5 centimeters. The depth is 0.5 centimeters that I'm going to, so times pi, that comes out to an amount of about 240 milliliters, 240 milliliters. So I'm going to pour half of the epoxy resin into my cup. Then the other half is going to be the epoxy resin hardener. This is Duo resin. I got it online. It had some good reviews. It's supposed to hold its color and not really yellow when exposed to light. So that is the only reason I got it. There are millions of different types of resins out there. So you pick whichever you prefer.
I mix the resin according to the instructions. In this case, it is 50% resin poured into the measuring cup. Then I add 50% hardener. If you don't get at least close as possible to 50%, then the resin isn't going to come out right. After that, stir slowly and steadily to mix the hardener and resin for 6 minutes, or however long your resin instructions say to go. You don't want to introduce air bubbles in this. I slowly poured the resin mixture into the mold, and I let it slowly spread out, again trying to avoid the addition of any air bubbles. We want it to be as smooth and even as possible. I take the individual shells that I had laid out on my pattern and one by one, I place them into the resin. They slowly sink in due to gravity, and I continue until I have them all in place. I use the stir stick to position them if they slip out of place. There's no need to rush here because the resin is going to take quite a while to dry, even though this is fast drying resin. So just make sure you get everything positioned where you need it to. With the resin poured and the shells all placed where I need them to go, I go over the poured resin with a heat gun. The heat will help eliminate any potential air bubbles. Next, I don't want any dust or dirt or debris or hairs or anything that might be in the air to fall into the resin before it sets and spoil my project. So I am covering it with a sheet of aluminum foil. 24 hours, the clear shell layer of resin has cured, so it's time to come back and do the final layer. This is going to be colored, so I am adding resin pigment that I got online. I want it to be blue, so I just add 1 or 2 drops at a time, slowly stir it in, and as I approach the shade I want, I continue to add more and more drops of pigment. You can always add more, you can't take it away. So just take it slow and be patient until you get the proper shade that you want. In this case, a rich blue. As before, I pour it slowly, gradually into the tray in the circle of hoops so it spreads out evenly and smoothly over the shells. Again, I don't want to introduce any air bubbles here. I want this to be a clear, perfect, nice, even application. Crushed glass is an old trick used by lamp makers and resin makers to add depth and complexity to their castings. I got this crushed glass online. I'm using a spoon to add it bit by bit.
And it's a moment of truth, y'all. Let's see if I can peel this up off the silicone mat. It's coming up. It's coming up. Man. Oh, look at that. Looks fairly nice. I'm not sure if that's exactly how I envisioned it, but it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. When I laid this down and poured it, I drew a template underneath with the circle where the mounting ring goes, a smaller centered circle where I have to drill a hole so the threaded bolt that holds everything in place can slip through, plus another smaller hole off to the offset from the center where the chain pull that controls the fan speed goes. To get this to work properly, I have to drill through the resin. To do that, I've got a drill, and I am going to start with a pilot hole so I can make sure it's centered properly, and then come back with a larger drill bit to get a wider hole. So, the resin is just a soft plastic, so it cuts easily, it drills through easily. You don't want to go too fast, you don't want it melting. take your time and be careful. Very good. First, I am drilling the chain pull. Now to drill the center hole. All done. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you see, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. If you really like what you've been seeing here at A Moment of Tiki, please leave a comment or maybe even share the video to your feeds. What this does is make it easier for others to find A Moment of Tiki. And if you do that, I will be grateful. Mahalo. Now, with the resin fully cured, or the resin light cover, I suppose is the technical term for this, I need to find out the circumference that I'm working with. Math tells me that the circumference is a little over 32 inches, maybe little less than 32 inches and a quarter, but my math isn't the greatest, so I don't entirely trust my numbers, even though I'm sure the numbers don't lie, so I'm going to physically measure this out to get a relative distance on here. So I have my butcher paper. This is going to be the template. I'm just rolling this along till I go the entire length to right there. And I am marking with a pencil. Okay. That's simple enough. Now from here, I've measured the space that I'm going to have from the bottom part of the ceiling fan blades with the clearance, allowing a couple of inches of clearance, down to the bottom of the down shaft, the down rod, where this is going to be hanging, have about 5.5 inches. So on my template, my butcher paper template here, I'm going to mark out 5 1/2 inches. On both sides. I'm going to draw my line from point to point to make sure it's 5.5 inches all the way across. And now I'm going to cut. Now with my template cut out, I'm going to wrap it around just to double check to make sure, and happily it fits perfectly. So this is the clearance that I'm going to have, and this is going to be the shelves. I am going to put this aside for now and pull up the scallop shells. These are scallop shells that I got online from various places. They were actually marked made in Japan. They were for restaurants and such that serve scallops. So I'm going to overlay them as such, and if my calculations are correct, I think I'm going to need about 3 layers. I'm not entirely sure. I'll space these out a little bit more. That's why I need this. The bottom of the scallop is going to hang down about 1 inch below the edge of the light. I ordered these online. They were sold as vintage food ware, served in scallops made in Japan And they were fairly, well, you got to hunt around for them. Some of them were expensive and some of them were less so. And I preferred the ones that are less so. And that, and then the final up top was a chipped one. May or may not use that. But I do think, we might only need 1 row, 2 rows instead of 3, which is entirely fine by me. Yeah, I think we're only going to go with 2 rows. It does not seem like there is enough room with only 5.5 inches that I can fit in 3 rows. I was originally calculating for about 6 inches, but the space isn't that much, so it's going to be 2 inches. Heard it here You heard it here first, folks. The next step is to cut out the hardware cloth. I'm not really sure why they call this hardware cloth. I've mentioned this before. It is a grid of wires that are tightly meshed together, maybe 1/2 centimeter apart, 1/4 of an inch. Yikes. I've got my wire cutters right here after the tin snips proved to be too dull. Guess I need to address that. And these are snipping right through easily, if not super quickly. Okay, and here we are. Put this to the side. We have, this is the mesh, and it's going to be stiff enough to support all of the shells. When we attach it here. Oh yeah. This is going to fit just right. I need to go through and turn down all of the little barbs that are still there from when I cut it so it doesn't snag me and draw blood, but we are, I think, in very good shape with this. Now I have this wire that came with the hardware cloth mesh, and I am cutting it in 3-inch lengths so I can attach the mesh onto my frame. Now, you will remember that I had drilled holes through the bamboo earlier, and what we're going to do is slide this through those holes and use it to anchor our mesh onto the epoxy light cover. A couple of twists with the screwdriver, the pliers, and we are in business. I'm going to take the remainder and I'm going to wire this together from this end. Fold over, slide it in, and tie it off. we go. Now it is time to drill holes in these scallop shells that I have for the lamp, so that I may take jewelry wire and wire it onto the hardware cloth that I have forming the outer ring. I tried this 2 ways earlier, using a regular drill bit and this Dremel engraving bit, which has a diamond surface. This is for like engraving ceramics or something like that. And because of the nature of the shell, it's much more ceramic-like, and I found that in my experience, you may find a totally different experience on your end, but I found that this drill bit, this little diamond engraving bit from Dremel, worked better at penetrating the shell without cracking or breaking. Because this is a fairly solid, non-porous surface, treat it like you're engraving or drilling ceramic or glass. In that case, it needs to be lubricated constantly. So I have this shallow container of water that I am going to drill right beneath the surface, so the bit where it's interfacing with the shell is constantly lubricated and cooled, and I'm going to go from there. There we go, that was simple enough. 2 holes right through the scallop shell. Just steady pressure, don't have to push too hard. You'll get a feel for it after you've done a couple of them. But just make sure the bit where it is interfacing with the shell is right under the water. You don't have to completely submerge the whole thing, and you can see little bits of little clouds of calcium, essentially, coming up off the shell into the water. Do this a couple dozen more times and I'll be in business. Now we are finally at the fun part. All the stressful elements have been completed. Just attaching the shells onto the lamp shade itself. I'm threading this black jewelry wire through the holes in the shells that I created earlier, and with the hardware cloth, attaching it thusly, attaching it so the shells overlap in a scale-like pattern, and on the back side I'm taking the wire and twisting it tight so it will hold said shells in position. Okay, and there we have it. The shell lampshade is 90% complete, and I'm thinking this is looking pretty darn good. I had my doubts. Again, never done this before, so I was uncertain as to what the process would entail and the end results, but I'm digging it.
To cover the gaps between the shells over the hardware cloth, I made a template out of paper and used that to cut triangle wedges out of scrap tappa cloth that I had. I take the individual triangles of tappa cloth, place them on the hardware cloth in the spaces between the shells, and then use ordinary needle and thread, black thread, to tie them into position, thus filling in the gaps and making the lamp look that much better. Finally, to complete the shade, I glue a piece of backpack braid all along the top of the circumference.
Because my shell shade is deeper than the glass shade that was there, the existing down rod does not come down far enough for me to attach and thread it on. So what I've done is I picked up one of the down rod extenders and a coupling, and what that's going to do is thread on to the end here, so I get that additional length necessary to attach and thread it on so it'll hold. The original down rod has this stop plate which anchors the light shade or the glass light shade, so it stabilizes it because it's, you know, a little bit bigger than a quarter, maybe a 50-cent piece here in the US, you know, 1.5 inches across, and it keeps it from wobbling once everything is tightened up and it's pressed up against this. This stop plate doesn't move. It is welded or clamped on there somehow. So what I have done is epoxy together 2 metal washers. And what this is going to do is slide up over this threaded rod up to the coupling, and it'll press up hard against that coupling. It can't go over, and that will act in the same manner as the stop plate. So it's a makeshift stop plate that I came up with. Okay, well, here goes nothing. I've got the shell shade right here. And I've got the stop plate plus a cushion underneath. I'm going to line up over the center hole. Now I need to line up the center hole and the secondary hole for these control chains to slide through. There's one, and I have to get up higher. This. Needless to say, if you're going to do this, make sure your fan is turned off. Now, the bottom plate, do the same thing. All the chains have to be threaded through the access holes. A little bit wobbly there. And now the round threaded nut that goes on the bottom and keeps everything from falling apart. There we go. Now we are almost, but not quite finished with the control chains right here. I want to add some custom pull chains, nautical themed. This is a Nautilus shell, I got online. I'm going to attach it right here. And for the fan control, I have a sand dollar, the little propellers on it. And I'm going to have it a little bit higher so the two aren't confused and people bumping their heads into them. Take the wire cutters and snip it right there. And install this. And the shell pull chains go along with the shell lamp and the shell resin. It looks pretty spiffy. Now, if you were going to build a shell lamp like this to be free hanging on its own and not part of a ceiling fan fixture, you wouldn't have to worry about drilling the holes in the bottom. For the top, you would cut out a circular piece of wood with a crossbar that would mount in the top part of this shade and offer support, and through the top bar you would anchor the chains or ropes or wires or whatever that you would anchor it to the ceiling, and in the center of that crossbar that goes through you would drill the hole to mount the light fixture and run the wire. I'll probably do that someday. Didn't do it this time because it didn't call for it, but you know, this is the same basic structure, construction techniques that you would use for that. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Never tried it before, never worked with resin before, never drilled shells before. This was all new to me, and it came out looking fantastic. So again, if I can do it, you can do it. I make the mistakes so you don't have to. Let me see what you come up with in the future, and until next time from the Lagoon of Mystery, aloha.
Well, if you ever feel lonely and you haven't got a friend, you feel downhearted, and that's a rope saying to get yourself together and head for a place I know. It's a little German town with a Spanish name, and once you go there, you never be the same, and it's a whole lot cleaner and safer than Mexico. Well, it's 90 miles from Houston, 120 from San Antonio, and once you hit the city limit, you don't have to be alone. Every tavern salesman that's on the road, every trucker that's carrying an overload knows a boom and a little bird they call a grain. If your ever loving woman won't treat you right, and your nights get longer and your pants get tight, then get yourself moving and get ready for a change. Some fella said money can't buy me love, but I know it couldn't be. Speaking of that classic country town they call a drain. Well, it's 90 miles from Houston, 120 from San Antonio, if you got a little money and you feel uptight, go to LaGrange and they'll treat you right. Just stop at the filling station, give them half a chance. And they'll give you directions to a little retreat with a grade A government inspected meat, and they'll send you to the famous chicken ranch. Well, it's 90 miles from Houston, 120 from San Antonio, and once you hit the city limits, you don't have to be alone. Every traveling salesman that's on the road, every trucker that's carrying overloads, knows a two-minute little bird they call green. Every traveling salesman that's on the road, every trucker that's carrying overloads, knows a two-minute little bird they call green. Thank you.
Honey, that was a little country place out there. The people tried to make it into something that it wasn't. Just a little country where I swear it amounted to.